Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, wait a minute. Good morning. My name is Patricia Doxey. I'm a reporter with the Daily Freeman newspaper. I'm here today with the candidates for Ulster County Executive, Jack Hayes, the Republican and Conservative candidate, and Pat Ryan, the Democratic candidate. We're going to be chatting with them for about an hour about a variety of topics, and we invite our viewers to chime in with any questions that they might have. We'll start with giving each of the candidates an opportunity to make an opening statement. Pat, we said that we would start with the candidate on my right, so that's you.
Aren't I supposed to be on the left?
I think you're on the right. Yeah, that's true. So
yeah.
If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I grew up reading the Daily Freeman, so it's always an honor to be here in the building I drove by every day growing up as a kid. I should just personally introduce myself first. I'm Pat. I was born and raised in Kingston and Hurley. My family's been in Ulster County for 5 generations. My wife, Rebecca, and I, we now live down in Gardner with our 2 rescue cats, Frankie and Wheatsy. And most excitingly, we're expecting our first child, a boy, due in August. So it's going to be a busy 2019 in the Ryan household. But we're here to talk about county executive. I'm running for county executive because I have a clear vision for how to lead our county forward, and because I have the leadership experience, the executive experience to implement that vision. So I'm sure we'll talk in a lot more depth, but at a high level, 4 big priorities for me in the vision. Number 1, we have to hold the line on taxes. We've done a good job of this. We have to continue to hold that line, and everything we do needs to come from a place of fiscal strength and fiscal responsibility. Number 2, we have to continue the economic growth that we've seen in the last few years, but also recognize that as we've had growth, over 40% of people living in Ulster County are still paycheck to paycheck based on a 2018 United Way report, which is unacceptable. So we have a lot of work to do there while both growing the economy and actually bringing everybody with us. Number 3, I want to implement a pretty bold idea, a Green New Deal here in Ulster County, which means moving to 100% renewable energy in 10 years, aggressive but doable, and it aligns us with what I think is the 21st century economy, and also setting up a Green Jobs Academy to enable that. And then final priority, and I know we've all been touched by this, the opioid epidemic continues to get worse. Ulster County was just came out in a 2018 report as the #1 worst county, unfortunately, in the state for overdose deaths from opiates. There's a lot of work to do here, and I'm ready to tackle this head on, and we have to fix that problem. So how am I going to actually implement that vision? What experience will I lean on? Ultimately, county executive to me is a leadership job, and that's what I've been doing my whole career. Starting as a West Point cadet, I was trained in the principles of leadership at, I think, one of the finest leadership institutions in the world. I went off as an Army officer, leading diverse teams of people in high stakes, high pressure situations, and having to make quick decisions with limited information. And then I moved into the private sector. I built a successful technology company. I grew it with my 2 partners from a few employees to over 150 employees, $25 million a year business. So I want to take all of that experience, that vision, and bring it to serve this county where I grew up, where my family's been, that has done so much to help us and continue to serve the public. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited about this opportunity. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Jack?
Good morning. I'm Jack Hayes. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and I came to Ulster County in 1955 and went to school at Fallsburg Central, graduated, and worked for a year in Channel Masters in Ellenville. Ellenville was a thriving location at that time. From that point, I realized I didn't want to make antennas for the rest of my life, so I went on to SUNY Delhi and got a degree in construction business. From there, I went into the United States Navy. I served 4 years as a boilerman on destroyers. I've served on 2 different destroyers, and it was actually, I guess they called it the Cold War at that point, but it was it was kind of active because we used to have situations with Russian trawlers in the Mediterranean. That said, I left the Navy on a Friday, and I entered the New York State Police on a Monday. So I'm fairly institutionalized. I went to Camp Smith Peekskill and for basic school, and then on to serve in numerous locations: Ellenville, Liberty, Kingston, Highland. And I know the area. I know the back roads, and I know the people who live there. I know the officials who operate, who are the town supervisors and the firemen. I know what it takes for a town supervisor to meet a budget. I was a town supervisor in Gardner. Afterwards, shortly afterwards, I became a county legislator. I know how to make a resolution and bring a resolution to fruition as a law. And I know what the constraints are of a budget because we helped in the legislature. It was a partnership between the county exec and the legislature to create a budget. So I have assisted in creating county budgets. I've made my own budget in the town of Gardner. I have a lot in common with Patrick. I served in the military, obviously, and then I went on to serve 18 years with the Air National Guard and went through Desert Storm and Operation Just Cause. So it's been a wonderful life in Ulster County. I've had a very active time. I enjoy it. I love the people of Ulster County. I can do the job. I will do the job, and I'll do it honestly and ethically.
Thank you. Thank you both. You know what? You both are from the southern part of the county, and you both talked about sort of the economic development issues. The southern portion of Ulster has struggled with bringing about new economic development. What would you do to help promote economic development in the southern portion of the county, particularly, but in all of Ulster County in general? Since we started with you, Pat, with the opening, I'm going to let Jack answer that question first.
I would concentrate on Wawarsing. Wawarsing has been devastated for decades. As I alluded to, I saw Ellenville, the village of Ellenville, when it was vibrant, when we had a tourism sector. We had the Neville, we had the Falls View, we had numerous bungalow colonies. It was a destination. I saw the people from Eastern Europe come and experience freedom. People with tattoos on their wrists. And we welcomed those people. We made them feel safe, and they knew that they had come to the right country. So that was Ellenville past. It fell off the face of the earth when Channel Masters left and the knife factory left. They were all good jobs. Maybe not to today's standard of green, but they were good jobs, and they created a life wage for people, and they prospered, and their children prospered. The children don't prosper anymore. I will make sure Wawarsing gets what it deserves with regard to attention financially. It has to be done. There can't be any more $1 million Ellenville promises. There's got to be actual cause and effect in Ellenville, in Wawarsing.
So this is the existential problem, and it's not just the southern part of the county. It's how do we get economic development going, meaningful economic development going in the whole county? As I talked about previously, when you have a situation where over 40% of people in the county, if they, for example, have their car break down and have a $500 bill at the auto shop, or they have a health issue, costs a few $100s, that's a devastating situation that they're not going to be able to dig out from. That in 2019 in Ulster County in the United States of America, we cannot allow that to be the case. And the way that we change that is to have a real strategy and a vision for what is Ulster County's competitive advantage in the 21st century economy. I mean, having grown up here, having seen my family, including my dad, run small businesses here, I understand the history My grandfather on my mom's side worked at IBM for 36 years. We have this rich history, but to me, it's about what is the vision going forward economically, and how do we play to our strengths? So what do I mean by that? The southern part of the county, it's an agricultural treasure. We have great soil, we have great farms. We're surrounded by apples and vineyards and gardeners specifically. So how do we lean into that advantage and empower farmers, small farmers, to actually compete again against the big mega farms? That's a big priority. How do we lean into green jobs, which I've talked a lot about? Green jobs in New York State are growing 7 times faster than any other category of jobs in the state right now. But yet we're not investing in skills training programs and apprenticeships to train our young people. I want to put much more funding into the community college and BOCES and other similar programs to actually arm people with 21st century skills to align. Finally, we have to have broadband in every single corner of this county. It's not the case. It is effectively a necessity at this point, like electricity and water, and that will be a big priority for me as well.
I'm going to follow up actually on that question, because you say we have to do these things and we have to provide more funding. Where does that money come from?
So I think the key thing here is we have to take the money. You know, we have a $329 million budget in the county right now. I think we can do all those things with the existing budget we have. It's about reprioritizing what we're spending on. So for example, when I talk about moving to 100% renewable energy, people say, well, how are we going to do that? If we upgrade all of the county building facilities to energy efficiency standards aligned with 21st century standards, it's going to save us huge amounts of money over time. If we work with the state and federal agencies to get funding for broadband out at the last kind of mile to underserved areas, that's going to grow and empower our economy aligned with the 21st century, as more people want to run internet businesses and businesses requiring access to the internet. So it's about reprioritizing the funding. On skills training programs, for example, we don't need additional funding. What we need to do is better align the vocational training programs we're offering with what the needs are of the labor market. And that's something that we can work on, and that I'll prioritize.
Jack, you've had experience working with the county budget. Do you think that there is room to reprioritize funding to help grow the economy? And what would you do specifically to and attract more economic development?
Mike Hine has had a very, very tight, close budget. There's no fat. If you take it from one segment, that's the only place you're going. You have to take it from somebody else to put it into training programs. I agree with Patrick. I believe that we have to address the poor and the working poor, but we have to find ways that will work. What I would do is ask the state corrections if we could use the bottom land, which is laying fallow now, and open it up to new farmers. Let them lease it or let them have it for almost nothing. Let them use the entire farm area of the correctional facility in Napanock. The farms over in the Shongam facility lay fallow. They don't do anything. Why not open them up to young farmers? Young farmers can't afford to buy land or even lease land. Let's do something real. And we have the land. It's available. We have to agree with each other. We have to get along with the assembly person and the senator. I can do that. I'll talk to Mr. Cahill. I'll talk to Jen Metzger. No problem. Let's do it.
Pat, one minute.
Yeah. One, I'm excited to work with both Senator Metzger, who's endorsed me, and Assemblyman Cahill, who's endorsed me. I look forward to partnering with them. I slightly disagree with you, sir, that if you take from one place, that it's sort of a zero-sum game. If we continue to grow our macro economy, we have more tax revenue so that we can do more things. So I believe that the way that we allow ourselves to do more programs to help veterans in our community who are homeless, to help the elderly, to improve our rural transit, is by growing the economy and having a specific thesis to align with that 21st century economy. Green jobs, agriculture, agritourism, advanced manufacturing, software, where I ran a successful business. So we have to be forward looking, and that will allow us to grow the tax base. That's my plan.
I totally agree with you. We have to raise revenues. Right now, we've got a 14% state aid, and we've got a $2 billion deficit in Albany. There's a good chance that 14% is going to get smaller and smaller. So that we definitely need revenues. So we need jobs for people, and we've got to send a clearer message of how to get jobs into Ulster County.
The Commissioner of the Finance Department recently released a sort of a warning to the legislature and to the Ways and Means Committee that in January, and he will concede and point out importantly that it's only 1 month's worth of data, but January's revenues, sales tax revenues, are down this year over last year's sales tax revenues of the same period. Some other state aids are down. He's saying we've got to take a closer look. Already in January, he's concerned about this budget that one of the two of you will adopt in well, I guess April, right? May, when you take office. How do you deal with those kinds of things right out of the gate? Who answered first? I think, Jack, you go first. Do you go first?
I've lost track.
I lost track. Pat was first. I'm sorry.
I think it's Patrick.
So the way I've always done planning, budgeting and planning, whether as a military officer or as a business owner and entrepreneur, you plan for multiple courses of action, right? You plan for a best case scenario, worst case scenario, and a middle case scenario. And I haven't seen the memo that you mentioned, but my guess is this is outlining sort of a worst case or less good case scenario around revenues into the county. And that's critical that we always have a plan for that worst case scenario, because to me, it's absolutely vital that we not cut these important services that our county provides, from mental health to social services, to making sure our roads are plowed and cleared, to making sure our young people can go to community college, and so on and so forth. We have to preserve those important things and services that we provide. So if we see things looking like we're not going to be able to do that, it's important that we're honest, we're transparent, and that we share that publicly and we share it internally and do that kind of contingency planning that's required. So I'll continue that approach. And what you'll always get from me is the truth, the straightforward truth with all the facts and the context, because I think that's how government is supposed to work. And that's the approach I'll take.
Right now, we're experiencing cost shift from the state to the local level. They're writing laws that are creating enormous burdens on the county and the towns. The series of social justice legislation with no bail and with extended periods when people are considered of age to be charged, they throw a lot of cost on us. It's not written, it's not talked about. We talk about social justice, and I am for social justice 100%. But people are not looking at the costs. They're not looking at the costs of what legalization of cannabis may be. The Colorado study tells you about the cost. The legal package that the Assembly put forward with regard to bail and regard to raise the age has a cost to it. And the cost isn't borne by Albany. It's borne by county and town. And we're going to experience that. We don't have the buffer to absorb that. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt us bad.
Go ahead.
Can I just, so we have gotten criminal justice wrong in this country and in the county for way too long. I'm really encouraged that we finally built a physical place in the city and in the county to tackle that. I disagree, though. If you look at the data on incarceration, by the way, the United States has more people in jail per capita than any other country in the world. It costs 7 times as much per year to jail someone as it does to rehabilitate them. That's a huge driver of cost in our county, in the state, and in the country. And that's something that I'm committed to fixing in partnership with our new sheriff and hopefully a new district attorney.
Well, the biggest portion of the reduction in funding is to state correctional, and it's going to push the local diversion tactics are going to go to probation. Probation is maxed out. You're going to have to fund probation at a higher level, and that is a state mandate. They are telling us what we have to do, but they're not giving us any money to do it. Association of Counties is very concerned about the enormous increase in state mandated programs with no funding. We've got to address that. We are on a tight budget. We don't have extra.
Jack, I'm going to ask you to answer this first, and it's sort of a follow-up. I've been covering county government for about 40 years.
You don't have to tell.
and I've been hearing that for all of those years. State mandates, unfunded mandates. We've got to do something. The state has to start putting up money for these programs that they're forcing down onto the counties. What makes you think that you will be able to do something that no other county executive in the state has been able to do yet, which is convince the state to fund their unfunded mandates?
I'm not going to convince the state. It's not going to happen. Upstate New York is not going to get assistance from the Assembly and the governor's office. What we have to do is tell the people what's going on. We have to tell the people that we are bearing the burden of what sounds like wonderful legislation. I want social justice for everyone, every person. But we need to be able to realize is that if this goes through, if when we start riding young people around looking for a place to arraign them, it's going to take up time. You're going to have policemen acting sort of like babysitters and finding a judge, because only certain judges can arraign youthful offenders. Youthful offenders can only be placed in a certain area. And if you can't find somebody, then you have to bring them home to mom and dad. And generally, that's where the whole problem started in the first place. So you're going to have policemen riding around being social workers. I don't know if it's going to work, and it's going to cost money.
I'm not sure if that was an answer to the question, but in terms of the question, I think the way you get anything done in life is having relationships and building trust. I talked about my great relationships, particularly with our state senators who represent both Senator Metzger and Senator Skoufis, as well as Assemblyman Cahill. I disagree. I think we can get more funding for the urgent needs that we have here in Ulster County from the state. So, for example, sadly, it is a heartbreaking fact, but we have to be honest, being the worst county for opiate overdoses in the state is terrible, but also presents an opportunity, frankly, to say, look, we need help. We need help desperately. And I will be up in Albany and anywhere else I can go, making that case and making clear that it's absolutely urgent and existential that we get more funding to tackle the opiate problem here, both in terms of upping our treatment facilities, and in terms of the resources we need to ensure that both from the big pharmaceutical companies and from any drug cartels operating in the area, that we cut down on the supply. I was just down at Ellenville Regional Hospital the other week meeting with their whole team. They have an incredibly impressive approach where they're the kind of the hub where anyone struggling with opiate addiction can come and be welcomed and then get linked into treatment with a whole kind of network of community partners from Catholic Charities and more broadly. So that's a perfect example of where I think we can get more funding and where I'll fight for it.
You mentioned, or we talked quickly about drugs, and you mentioned the opioid crisis. New York State is looking to legalize marijuana for adult use. One of the proposals that is in Albany now would allow the counties to have the ability to opt out of having dispensaries in their county. Do you support the legalization of recreational marijuana? And would you work to block dispensaries from operating in the county, or would you allow them to?
Who's first this time?
Me. I would leave that decision up to the people of the county. I believe there should be a referendum. And prior to the referendum, I believe we have to talk about all the situations that will be affected with regard to legalization of recreational marijuana. I have no problem at all with medical marijuana. I would rather see it go through the testing process that we do with all drugs. Apparently, this is getting some sort of a pass. I would rather see it go back to being approved as an approved drug. As far as legalization of recreational, there's a problem. It's much more difficult to find out if marijuana is in the system, whether it affects different situations, like driving while intoxicated. We've got the Schoharie incident where the driver of a limousine killed 20 people, or 20 people were killed in the accident, found to be have cannabis in his system. And there's a difficulty now determining whether that cannabis affected his operation, because apparently there's a vagueness about how fresh the cannabis has to be in the system in order to give culpability to the person who has been arrested. It's very expensive. It's very long. It doesn't fit with the new bring all your cases to fruition or at arraignment in 15 days. That's not going to happen. You can't even get a drug. You can't get a drug test done in 15 days from New York State labs. So a lot of this is contradictory. And it has cost effect. In Colorado, it was shown to increase people with schizophrenia. The new marijuana is very, very potent. It's 40 to 60% potent. And the bad guys want to compete with that. So they're going to try and make it even more potent, because the bad guys are not going to go away. They're still going to sell marijuana.
So I actually think done responsibly, there's a major opportunity for us as a county to embrace what I think is coming, which is legalization in New York State of recreational marijuana. I support it. And I think we need to position ourselves to think about how do we embrace this, what's coming, and do it in a responsible way that honors public safety. We need to think through those concerns. But at the end of the day, I've been spending a lot of time talking to our farmers and our agricultural community. They're actually really excited about the opportunity to grow this new crop that they believe. One farmer told me, I believe that marijuana can be the equivalent of what corn was for us 40 years ago in the county as the next crop that will power and enable small family-owned farms to stay in business. I think there's an opportunity there. There's also an opportunity to generate more revenue for the county for us to do more good work. So I think, like many things that we've talked about, it's a question of, can we position ourselves at the forefront of a change that's coming and be positioned to compete? And that's what I plan to do in this regard as a county.
But would you support the opening of recreational marijuana dispensaries within the county's borders?
Yes, yeah, no, both. I think both dispensing and growing, and I imagine there will be two different components to the licensing around that, are things that we should embrace. And there's 12 other states across the country that have done this, and they've all done it slightly differently. I've been studying that extensively. What I'd want to do from day one is stand up sort of a task force within the county, both government and private sector, and look at both the opportunities and the challenges. But I think there's more opportunity than challenge.
My next question comes from Legion Riders Legion Riders Chapter 1298. They ask for Mr. Ryan. They ask, your campaign resume is vague about your business experience. You have no public or elected office experience. What business were you in after the Army, and what qualifies you to be the CEO of the entire county government?
It's a great question. That's why I think I'm the strongest candidate to take on this job. I've been the president of a 150-person company that I grew from scratch through all the phases. It was a IT software company. What we basically did is get better software technology out to our troops in Iraq, Afghanistan. I myself, after leaving the active duty, where I deployed twice to Iraq for a total of 27 months, then went to Afghanistan to field this innovative software to troops in harm's way, and it basically let them better understand the threats to them and keep themselves safe while they were doing their job. And in the course of growing this company, I learned how to build budgets at all phases of growth. We had a comprehensive paid family leave plan before anyone had those kinds of plans. The coolest thing that we did at the company was what we call the tech boot camp, where over half of our employees were veterans returning home. Most of them had a high school degree level of education. We, on our own, invested in them in a 6-week boot camp to get them tech training and certifications, where they were then coming out making $60,000 to $90,000 a year in these jobs. That's the kind of approach that we need here in the county, that I want to bring to the county in all of these emerging areas of economic growth.
Mr. Hayes, it's, from the same group, you have experience in town government, public employment, and a small business. What qualifies you to be the CEO on the scale of the entire county government?
The scale changes. The type of approach doesn't change too much. You have to have fiscal integrity. You have to have the ability to prioritize, and then you have to have the communication skills to get a consensus. Unlike private industry, the CEO or executive in private can make a decision, and that's the way it goes. That's done. In government, you need to have other people. In town government, you need to have 3 votes out of a 5-vote board. In the county, you need the legislature to agree. Used to be 33, now it's 23. There's a lot more communication involved and consensus building when you do things in government with regard to running a budget. There's a lot more review. The legislature reviews the budget all year long. They watch for benchmarks to see if we're keeping within the guidelines of where we thought we should be. Are we overspending, underspending? Are we going to have a surplus? One person cannot dictate how that will be administered. That's a group thing. And a group consensus is what government is about. It's a lot different than private industry. Private industry is a lot easier, excuse me, to make decisions, move them quickly. Things don't move very quickly in government, and it's sort of incremental. We make small gains and sort of eat the whale in small pieces, but you can still eat the whale. So.
Our next question is from Ralph Mitchell, who is a reader. There's been a lot of discussion. You know, there was a lot of controversy around the Ashokan Reservoir and the rail trail, the removal of the tracks on there, and the creation of a recreational trail. He would like to know if you're in favor of connecting the end of the current Catskill Mountain Railroad track to the Glenford Dike at the Ashokan Reservoir. Currently, that is not part of the plan. Jack, I'll let you go first on this one.
You know, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I don't know that the specifics of that particular maybe challenge or whether there's, private property involved or something to that effect. The rail trails have been excellent. They've opened up corridors that to recreational activity, and recreational activity is commerce. Route 28 corridor used to be all recreation. It kind of dried up over a period of time. There came a time when it was cheaper to go to Europe than it was to go to the Catskill Mountains. That's changed around. People are coming back to the Catskill Mountains. I could see investing in the 28 corridor and making it more user-friendly for campsites. There's a number of groups that are doing campsites with a little bit more comfort now. And it's appealing to the generation that is in the campsite, venue. So to his specific question, I don't have an answer. I can check on it. I will check on it and be able to talk to it at greater length.
Was it Ralph?
Yeah.
Ralph, thank you for the question if you're watching. I think the plan is, as we've got it in place now, is a good plan that I support. And I know there's been a lot of discussion and input in that plan, which is how all these decisions should be made. What I think is really exciting about the rail trail network that we're building, I was shocked when I really dove deep on the statistics in a good way. We had over 5 million tourists come to Ulster County last year, and those numbers are growing year over year over year. Our tourism industry, our hospitality industry, agritourism is generating millions of dollars in economic activity for all of our local businesses, and making these investments to have that competitive advantage to draw people in when they're thinking about where do they want to go. I mean, we have this, what I think, to play to, and is that many of those people who will end up, staying here and living here in our growth path for Ulster County.
I think though is that road, their line to be extended. Currently, the plan that was adopted by the legislature does not provide for the railroad to go to the Glenford Dyke, which is at the Ashokan Reservoir. There's been a lot of controversy around that. The Catskill Mountain Railroad, as a private business, still in being able to get to that point. So I don't know that he's necessarily talking about rail trails as much as he is the tourist railroad.
Right.
Yeah, I think the plan we've got now is the right plan.
There's also been several proposals before the Ulster County Legislature calling for campaign finance reform, with donations from counties doing business or from those who have been or will be appointed to positions within the administration, a centerpiece of several of those proposals. Do you think it matters whether candidates accept contributions from those two groups? And do you or would you accept contributions from businesses doing business with the county or from those people who you have appointed to be in your administration? I think you're first.
From the first day, I think it was the second day of my campaign, I made a very public pledge that I will not accept any donations from any corporate entities, any LLCs, or any corporate PACs. We have to get corporate interests and special interests out of our politics, especially at the local level here in county government and local government. And that's why I was really proud to make that pledge. No one's ever approached fundraising for this office that way, to my knowledge. So I think that's a really important step in that direction. Campaign finance reform is something we've got to tackle, and I'm excited to work. I know the legislature's got a few different plans they're looking at. I'm excited to work with them, and I'm trying to lead by example in the pledge that I've taken.
I have to agree strongly with Patrick. I believe that we have to be above board. We have to maintain the public trust. We have to make sure everything we do is ethical, that we've had a cloud of ethics hanging over Ulster County. It doesn't help to have that ethics cloud when you're trying to influence people to move into your area. You don't want to be a New Orleans type situation, a municipality, where people are worried about whether they have to contribute to your campaign in order to get their development project through. I don't want to see any of that. I want to be above board. Whoever puts the best foot forward and does development that fits into our master plans and comprehensive plans, that's the people who we want here in Ulster County.
I have a question from Amanda Altobel. Amanda Altobel says that she and her husband bought their first home in Tilson in 2016. Since purchasing their home, they've seen their taxes increase to a level that they've never predicted, and that the taxes have increased to a point where they've considered having to sell the home that they can no longer afford. She would like to know, what are your thoughts on how the working Ulster County residents are being taxed? And how will you work to make sure Ulster County residents can stay in their homes? Where did I go? Pat, you first.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Amanda. And I've heard this. I've spent the last few months traveling all around the 24 towns, villages, municipalities. Housing affordability and the burden of paying and affording for housing is probably the #1 concern I've heard. New York, Ulster County is the 3rd worst county in New York State for housing affordability. Over 55% of Ulster County residents are living below what the state comptroller defines as the housing affordability threshold. So it's a huge problem, and it's particularly bad in the county. And I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying, Amanda. We get our tax, we get it every year and kind of shake our heads. There's a bunch of pieces that go into being able to, I think her question is right. How can we make sure that young people and old people and everybody in between can afford to stay and live here? Taxes are a big part of it, which is why I'm committed to holding the line on taxes. But the other piece of it is how we do our development. As we continue to have economic growth here, we need to be mindful of that right balance of, yes, we want more activity, we want more housing, but it needs to be done in a way that recognizes that there are still lots of people, over 55% of who can't currently really make housing affordability work. One of the things that I've called for, although I can't, each town ultimately, of course, determines their zoning under home rule, but I believe as a county, we should set a goal that any new development we're doing of housing should have a 10% affordable housing component, so that we ensure that as we have growth, that everybody can actually come and still afford to live here, which is good for our economy. People being able to afford their housing and have spare cash to then go participate in the economy is necessary to grow our economic activity.
Taxes have become another mortgage. You can pay off your house and then have your taxes cost you almost as much as what your mortgage used to cost you. It goes back to how much can we do and how much can we afford. We've got an area in the budget where 35% goes to social services. We need to mitigate the problem with, so we need to address how the poor stay poor year after year, decade after decade. If we can get less people on social services and back into the workforce, I believe that private industry can help do this more than government. Government can try to hold the line, but you've got fixed costs that are going to continue. You've got teachers' salaries. School taxes are one of the biggest. County and town are almost affordable, but school taxes go up guaranteed 2% every year. In 10 years, that's 20%. If you look at what your cost is today and say, can I be here in Ulster County 10 years from now? The answer may very well be no. So we've got to figure out how this can be addressed, or else this is maybe just a wealthy county and then we'll displace all the poor people. I'm not sure.
We have a lot of, I'm sorry, did you want to respond?
No, I think we both, this is, as we've talked about in multiple questions, this is the core, yes. This is the core challenge. And this is where I think there's an opportunity. The other side of affording to live in a place like Ulster County is wages. Wages have been stagnant or even declined in many parts of the county since the 2008 financial crisis. And increasingly, how we're training and educating people isn't aligning with where jobs are. That's why I'm so focused on these skills training programs and vocational training programs to better align them with higher paying jobs so that people can have more income coming in and afford housing, afford healthcare, afford groceries, afford gas. Every person I talk to just keeps saying, man, my costs go up from everything from my drug prices to my rent, but the money coming in is either stagnant, at best it's stagnant. And that's just not a sustainable solution. So we need to be making those investments in skills training, broadband, and other foundational investments so that people are able to, our workers are able to get and demand better pay.
We keep talking about attracting jobs, bringing in higher paying jobs. I mean, it's something that's been being worked on for a long time. The Ulster County's economic development sort of engine has really been working on that throughout at least the last half of former County Executive Hines' tenure, and I would say pretty much throughout his whole tenure. How do you think what would you do differently, or how do you think you will succeed where he was unable to, if we still have places like Tech City that sit vacant, and places in Woolworthing and Ellenville where they lost major industries like Channel Master, like several other companies that were down there? Those are not jobs that are going to come back. So what will you do differently to attract jobs to the county?
I'm happy to go first.
I don't want to sound oversimplistic, but I think communication skills are going to help solve this problem. We've had a county exec who didn't get along with a New York State assemblyman. We've got situations where the exec's office doesn't get along with the city of Kingston. The city of Kingston is 25,000 people. They've got an infrastructure problem. We've got to talk to each other. We've got to talk to each other nicely. There's something called total quality management, which pretty much says treat everybody as if they're your customer. Make that person happy when they walk away. That's maybe pie in the sky or unrealistic, but if we start thinking about it, it moves. We did this in the United States Air Force in the early 90s. It was a pleasure to go from one department to the other because people treated you with respect. They tried to help you with what your problem was. We have to find the towns, the geographic localities that want growth and give them a higher priority. Put them in touch with the people who want to spend their money in Ulster County. The business of county planning doesn't talk with town planning, and county planning doesn't talk with state planning. It's inevitable that there's going to be failure. And then when people have to wait 10 years to get approval on a project, it doesn't work. That doesn't work for business. Business has got to move fast. If they're going to invest, they need to be welcome. And we have to find out who wants the business, help put them in contact with the people who want to come here.
We've made tremendous strides. I'm really encouraged by the economic activity we've seen in especially the last 10 years. I mean, for example, you look at the kind of the creative economy, particularly the film industry, the arts industry in Kingston and in the county. That's a place where we set out and said, this is an area we want to make a move in. We had a deliberate plan. We created some tax incentives in partnership with the state to achieve it, and we're executing on it. Those are the kinds of calculated strategic risks that we need to be willing to take. I mean, the reality is we're behind economically as a county still right now, other parts of the state and the country. We need to recognize that and be willing to take some calculated risks. So one of the places, for example, I think we can do this, play to our strengths, agriculture, not just production, but the value add side of agriculture. We've got some really cool food processing and marketing companies popping up in the county that now serve the New York City market. There's one of them actually at the old Tech City campus. How do we ramp that area up? How do we replicate what we've done with craft breweries and distilleries and creating really high quality products that are now distributed nationally and internationally? I think Keegan Ales is a perfect example of a local company that was enabled to succeed with a great leadership team, but also with a talented workforce. And with a competitive kind of economy that gave them access to markets. So the last thought on this, whether it's a high-end tech company or the restaurant owner I was talking to down in Ellenville the other week, the number one thing I'm hearing from business owners who want to grow their business is, I can't find skilled workers. I'm desperate for good workers. That's a problem we can solve. That is imminently a problem we can solve. And it's a problem that government is well set up to solve. That's why I'm so focused on skills training and apprenticeship programs, whether it's in the retail industry, hospitality, technology, and green jobs. That's how we continue to build on this success.
Pat, I'm going to start with you on this question. The legislature has been the political divide on the legislature has been razor thin for the past several years. And we have seen more and more sort of partisanship come out of. How would you work with both the majority and the minority to sort of alleviate some of the tension on the legislature today?
Yeah, I mean, my philosophy is governing, making sure our schools function, making sure that our working and functional. Those are not partisan issues, and we have to get back to that mindset. People say, "Oh, you're in politics or you're a politician." I believe that all of us are in public service, and when you're in public service, you come last. Your community and the greater public good comes first. We need to be constantly reminding ourselves as elected officials and public servants that is the ethos that we have to bring to this job. If that's the mindset that everybody comes in with, everything else will work together to make sure we have funding for skills training programs. We'll work together to move our county to 100% renewable energy because it'll save us money, and it won't be an ideologigical or partisan thing. It's just the smart, wise thing to do to position us competitively. I think we can't give up on what, that may sound, naive to some, but if we give up on that idea, then we're in a really kind of sad place. And I refuse. I'm an optimist about getting back to that place. I mean, when I was leading a patrol, about to go out into harm's way in Iraq, and I looked around my sort of circle of 30 soldiers as we're doing our pre-patrol brief, I wasn't asking them, are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? I wasn't asking or caring, are you a man or a woman? Are you white or black? Are you Christian or Muslim? We had a mission to accomplish together, and we were going to come together and accomplish that mission for the greater good. That's what we need to do here in Ulster County, and that's how I'll lead our government.
Jack, and keeping in mind that you've served on this legislature in the past, so you have some familiarity with the.
I do indeed. I was going to say, been there, done that. Bought the T-shirt.
Is there a T-shirt? Can I get one?
You bet. We were a sort of radical. There was like 7 people in the legislature that was somewhat radical. They were talking to each other. It was like a third caucus. I got along very well with Sue Zimmett. I got along very well with Mary Shealy. Being neither a Republican or a Democrat, I have that ability. You can't buttonhole me to that or that. The caucuses at times try to, whip you into shape, and we want you to vote this way or that way. But as Pat alluded to, you're working for the public. I work for you. When I'm there, I work for you, John Q. Citizen. So what I want to do is find out, how do we do it better? How do we do it so that you realize some benefit, so that you realize that you can afford to live in Ulster County? I feel very, very threatened by the fact that I can't afford to live in Ulster County. I'm aging, obviously. That's not a big secret. I'm a little long on the tooth, but I like it here. I like the 3 seasons. You can kind of keep winter, but the other 3 I'm fine with. And so how can I stay? I can stay if we make it affordable, if we do county government that's affordable. We have a good county government. And maybe the tension or friction between the people in the legislature might be a positive factor too. Everyone's trying to get to the same goal. They'd have different ways of getting there. We want to do the good thing for the people of Ulster County.
Would you be able to work with people, with whoever's in the majority, if the Democrats have the majority or the Republicans who have the majority? You'd be able to work with both sides?
Absolutely.
That's how government works. I mean, you have to be willing to do what's in the greater public interest and set that. Any personality, any ego has to be set aside. It's about the greater public good.
All right. I would like to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. We've got about 6 minutes left, but we promised we would get you out on time, and I want to give you an opportunity to make some final remarks, unless we had some questions.
On your final remarks, Prof. Mitchell also wanted you to let everybody know how you're going to contact them, how if people want to contact your campaign or you, how they approach you. So when you close, just include that to your closing remarks.
Great.
Okay, so started on my right, we'll start on my left. Jack, I'll let you go first. And
I enjoyed the discourse with Patrick very much. I think we have probably more in common than we have not in common. I also have 2 rescue cats and a new grandson just last week. So I can understand how excited you are, because my son and daughter-in-law were just thrilled, and they've been talking to this baby for 9 months. So you can contact me at jackforexec.com. So, but the thing is, let's build a conversation from here to November that says what we can do for Ulster County. What can we do for Ulster County, and not what Ulster County can do for us? That's a little takeoff on Jack Kennedy, but I like Jack Kennedy. I voted for Jack Kennedy. I thought he was a wonderful man. Hated to see what happened. And I think what we can do is we'll make this election work for all of Ulster County. And that's I will dedicate my race to that, and I will subdelegate Wawarsing. Wawarsing is going to find an increase in detention over the next 4 years. I promise.
Thank you for having me, Jack. This is actually the first time we've ever officially met, so it's nice to meet you. Even though we're both Gardner residents.
But both military guys too.
Yeah. And no, I think I'm glad to hear you agreed with a lot of what I said. I do think it's important to people understand there are some differences here.
Definitely.
As a member of the Conservative Party, I think, frankly, it's a party. You're actually the chair of the Conservative Party. It's a party that looks, in my opinion, largely backwards. And what I think is called for in Ulster County is to look forwards. We have to embrace the 21st century economy. We have to lean into playing to our strengths in the environment, in tourism, in agriculture, in technology and advanced manufacturing. I've laid out a specific vision to grow our economy while taking care of the 40% of people who still need a whole lot of help. I've laid out a specific vision to implement a Green New Deal here in Ulster County, to move us to 100% renewable energy, to stand up a Green Jobs Academy. I've laid out specifics to tackle the opioid epidemic, and we can do all that while holding the line on taxes. I'm excited to continue to hear some more detail about Mr. Hayes' plans. You can always reach out to me in a whole bunch of different ways. I'm going to do something that my wife may give me some crap for. I'm going to give you my phone number. It's 845-481-0833. That's my cell phone. I think it's very important that elected officials and candidates be accessible all the time. I give out the number all the time. No one ever calls me. So if I get calls, that'll be great. Our website is ryanforulster.com. You can email me at pat@ryanforulster.com. We're on Facebook and Twitter, and I'm still figuring out Instagram, but I think we're on that. So I look forward to the discussion, and it's really an honor to be here. And thank you for having us.
I do feel like I have to give Mr. Hayes an opportunity to respond to your statement that the Conservative Party is a backward-looking party, though.
Sure.
Thank you very much. I had thought about that. My record is different than an overall view, and possibly an overall view is what's out there. But if you look at what we did in 2002 and 2003 in the town of Gardner, we ushered in a renaissance. We did like 32 different things. They didn't have to do much after I left because they kept working on the 32 things that we started. It was the most diverse board in the history of Gardner. It had 5 different parties: Republican, Conservative, Independents, and Save the Rural Roads. Diversity works. We did it.
Just one last thing. If people want to get in contact with you, how they reach you?
At jackforexecutive.com.
All right. And with that, we're going to thank our viewers who are still viewing, and the questions from our readers. Thank you very much for joining us. And the story will be posted shortly.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack,
Appreciate it.
good to meet you.
Thank you.